Felicity Parker's heart sank as she reached the airport gate, gasping for breath. No. No, no, no! She whispered, her pulse racing as she watched the boarding doors close. The plane, the one she desperately needed to be on, was taxiing away, her last chance to make it home for her sister's wedding slipping through her fingers. She turned to the airline attendant behind the counter. Please, there has to be another way. I need to be on that flight, she pleaded, her voice tight with panic. The woman gave her an apologetic smile. I'm sorry, ma'am, but the next available flight isn't until tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow afternoon was too late. Too late to be there for her sister. Too late to keep her promise. Felicity exhaled sharply, running a hand through her long brown waves. She had barely scraped together enough money for this ticket. She couldn't afford another one. Rough morning? Came a deep, smooth voice from behind her. She turned, expecting yet another impatient traveler annoyed by her desperation, but instead, her eyes met a pair of striking blue ones. The man standing before her was tall, broad-shouldered, and effortlessly put together in a tailored navy suit. His golden brown hair was slightly tousled, as if he had run a hand through it one too many times today. I missed my flight, she admitted, her voice hollow. I gathered that much. His lips twitched in something that wasn't quite a smile. Where were you headed? Chicago. The word came out in a sigh, heavy with frustration. For my sister's wedding. He studied her for a moment, his gaze sharp, assessing. Then, without hesitation, he pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. I have a jet leaving for Chicago in an hour. You're coming with me. Felicity blinked. Excuse me? I have an extra seat on my plane, he said simply. Consider it my good deed for the day. Her stomach flipped. Who was this man? And why was he offering her a seat on a private jet as if it were no big deal? That's really generous, but I can't just. Yes, you can. He cut her off smoothly. Unless you have a better option? She didn't. Felicity hesitated for only a second before exhaling. Who even are you? He extended a hand. Elias Montgomery. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place it. Still, what choice did she have? With a deep breath, she shook his hand. Felicity Parker. He gave a single nod and motioned for her to follow. Come on. We don't have much time. Felicity had no idea that the man helping her wasn't just some generous stranger. He was one of the wealthiest CEOs in the country. And he was about to turn her entire world upside down. Felicity followed Elias Montgomery through the private terminal, her mind struggling to keep pace with the sheer absurdity of her situation. Less than half an hour ago, she had been panicking over a missed flight. Now, she was striding toward a private jet like she belonged in this world of effortless luxury. Her sneakers barely made a sound against the polished floors. Around them, attendants bustled with quiet efficiency, acknowledging Elias with respectful nods as they passed. He carried himself with a confidence that made it clear he was used to this treatment, as if the world itself bent slightly to his will. When they reached the jet, a uniformed crew member opened the door, stepping aside to let them board. Felicity hesitated at the base of the stairs, looking up at the sleek aircraft that gleamed under the morning sun. This is real, she muttered under her breath. Elias glanced back at her. Having second thoughts? No, she said quickly, forcing her feet to move. Just adjusting. Inside, the cabin was impossibly elegant. Plush leather seats, polished wood accents, and soft lighting made it feel more like an upscale lounge than an airplane. A stewardess greeted them with a warm smile, offering drinks before retreating to the front. Felicity sank into one of the seats, feeling painfully out of place. So, you do this often? She asked, watching as Elias settled across from her with an ease she could never hope to match. Fly privately? He met her gaze, something unreadable flickering in his expression. Yes. She exhaled a quiet laugh. Must be nice. He studied her for a moment before replying. It has its advantages. The way he said it made her wonder if there were also disadvantages, but before she could ask, the engines rumbled to life. As the jet taxied down the runway, Felicity tightened her grip on the armrests. Elias noticed. "Not a fan of flying? I don't usually have an issue," she admitted. "But this feels different." "How so?" She searched for the right words. "Like I accidentally stepped into someone else's life." Elias tilted his head slightly, as if considering her answer. "Maybe it's just a preview of what's possible." She shook her head with a small smile. "Trust me, this isn't my world." His expression remained unreadable. "You never know." The engines roared, and within moments they were airborne. Felicity forced herself to relax, breathing through the nerves. Elias, on the other hand, looked entirely unaffected, his fingers idly scrolling through something on his phone. "So," she said, eager for a distraction, "what do you do?" His gaze lifted to hers, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. "You don't know? Should I?" Most men in Elias's position would have looked surprised. Offended, even. But he only seemed intrigued. "I suppose that's refreshing." She raised an eyebrow. "That's not an answer." He set his phone aside. "I run a company." She waited for more, but he didn't elaborate. "That's vague." His lips twitched. "It's a broad company." She narrowed her eyes. "You're being deliberately evasive." "Maybe." She crossed her arms. "Why?" "Because for the first time in a long while, I'm having a conversation with someone who doesn't already know everything about me." Something in his tone made her pause. There was a weight to his words, something unspoken lingering beneath them. She considered pushing further but decided against it. Instead, she leaned back in her seat. "Fine. Keep your secrets, mysterious benefactor." Elias let out a quiet chuckle. "I might tell you more if you make it interesting." Felicity huffed a laugh. "I didn't realize I was being tested." "Everyone is, whether they know it or not." She rolled her eyes, but she couldn't deny that he intrigued her. There was something about the way he spoke, the way he carried himself, that made it impossible to look away. The flight passed in a strange blur of sharp conversation and unexpected moments of silence. Elias was unlike anyone she had ever met, reserved but not cold, direct but not unkind. She got the sense that he was used to people trying to impress him, and she had no intention of doing so. When they finally landed in Chicago, Felicity's heart thudded with anticipation. She was here. She had made it. As they stepped onto the tarmac, Elias turned to her. "Do you have a ride? My sister's fiancé was supposed to pick me up, but he thinks I'm still stuck in New York." Elias considered this for a moment before gesturing toward a sleek black car waiting nearby. "I'll have my driver take you." Felicity hesitated. "You've already done more than enough." He held her gaze. "I insist." She searched his face, trying to understand why he was being so generous. But there was nothing there except certainty. "Okay," she said softly. As they drove through the city, she found herself stealing glances at him. There was something about Elias Montgomery, something she couldn't quite name. And something told her this wasn't the last time their paths would cross. The car rolled to a smooth stop in front of a grand, ivy-covered estate on the outskirts of Chicago. The driveway was lined with twinkling lanterns, casting a golden glow against the approaching dusk. Felicity exhaled, nerves tightening in her stomach. Elias, seated beside her, tilted his head slightly as he studied the house. "Your sister's wedding is here?" She nodded, her fingers twisting in her lap. "It's being hosted at her fiancé's family estate. His parents are. Well, let's just say they appreciate the finer things in life." His gaze flickered over her expression, as if reading something beneath her words. "And you don't?" Felicity hesitated before shaking her head. "I don't have anything against luxury. It's just never been my reality." Elias didn't respond right away, but there was something thoughtful in the way he regarded her. Then, without another word, he pushed open the door and stepped out. She blinked in surprise as he turned back toward her, extending a hand. "Come on. I'll walk you in." Felicity hesitated. That's really not necessary. Maybe not, he admitted. But I'm already here. A strange warmth settled in her chest as she placed her hand in his, allowing him to help her out of the car. The contact was brief, but it left an odd charge in the air. They approached the entrance together, and before Felicity could knock, the doors swung open to reveal a tall, impeccably dressed woman with sharp eyes and an air of practiced politeness. Felicity, the woman greeted with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We were beginning to wonder if you'd make it. Felicity forced a smile. Hi, Meredith. Her sister's soon-to-be mother-in-law barely spared her a glance before her attention shifted to Elias. Her expression subtly changed, the cool politeness replaced by intrigue. And who is this? Felicity opened her mouth, but Elias beat her to it. Elias Montgomery, he said smoothly, offering his hand. Meredith's demeanor shifted instantly. Montgomery? Her fingers brushed over her pearls. As in Montgomery Enterprises? Elias gave a small nod, his expression unreadable. Felicity's stomach dropped. Of course. That's why his name had sounded familiar back at the airport. She had unknowingly spent hours in the company of one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. Meredith, clearly delighted by this revelation, stepped aside. Please do come in. Felicity, dear, why didn't you mention you were bringing such a distinguished guest? Felicity shot Elias a look, but he didn't seem fazed in the slightest. They stepped inside, and almost immediately, the hum of conversation and clinking glasses filled the air. The house was filled with elegantly dressed guests in designer attire, the scent of fresh flowers and expensive champagne lingering in the air. Felicity straightened her dress, suddenly painfully aware of how underdressed she was in comparison. A familiar voice called her name, and she turned just in time to see her sister, Olivia, rushing toward her. Relief and excitement flashed across her face. You made it! Olivia threw her arms around Felicity in a tight embrace. I was so worried when you didn't answer my last message. Felicity hugged her back. I had a little help. As Olivia pulled away, her gaze landed on Elias, and her eyes widened slightly. And who is this? Elias Montgomery. He introduced himself, offering a polite nod. Recognition flickered in Olivia's expression, but to her credit, she didn't react like Meredith had. Instead, she gave Felicity a knowing glance, a silent question in her eyes. Before Felicity could even attempt an explanation, Meredith reappeared, placing a manicured hand on Elias's arm. You must join us for dinner, she insisted. It would be an absolute pleasure to have you as our guest. Elias glanced at Felicity, as if silently asking for her opinion. She knew what she should say, that he didn't have to stay, that he had already done more than enough. But something about the idea of him leaving so soon made her hesitate. If you don't have anywhere to be, she said carefully, you're welcome to stay. A flicker of something unreadable crossed his face, but after a beat, he nodded. All right. Meredith beamed, clearly pleased with the turn of events. Wonderful! Let me introduce you to the rest of the family. As Elias was whisked away, Felicity let out a quiet breath. Olivia nudged her. So, care to explain how you ended up arriving with Elias Montgomery? Felicity sighed. It's a long story. Then I hope you're willing to tell it over dinner. Felicity wasn't sure how to answer that, because the truth was, she wasn't entirely sure what to make of Elias Montgomery herself. And something told her this night was only going to get more complicated. The dining room was a masterpiece of elegance, with a long mahogany table stretching beneath a grand chandelier that bathed the space in golden light. Every seat was occupied by impeccably dressed guests, their laughter and conversation weaving together in a rich hum of sophistication. Felicity had never been surrounded by so much polished wealth, yet the only person who held her attention was Elias. He sat beside her, his presence commanding without effort. The man who had swept into her life just hours ago now felt like an unshakable force, as though he had always been meant to be here. Every time her gaze flickered toward him, she found his already on her, watching her with an intensity that made it impossible to ignore. Meredith, clearly eager to keep him engaged, steered the conversation toward business. The other guests leaned in, fascinated by every word he spoke. Yet, despite their efforts to draw him into discussions of power and strategy, his attention remained tethered to Felicity. When the first course was served, delicate plates of seared scallops paired with aged wine, she noticed Elias barely touched his food. Instead, he leaned toward her slightly, lowering his voice just enough that only she could hear. "Are you enjoying yourself?" Felicity hesitated before answering. "It's different from what I'm used to." His lips curved slightly. "I gathered that much." She set her fork down. "And what about you? Is this the kind of evening you typically spend your time on?" Elias glanced around the table, where Meredith was now discussing the finer points of European real estate with a man who looked like he had never seen a day of financial struggle in his life. "I've attended more dinners like this than I can count. But tonight feels different." There was something in the way he said it, in the way his gaze locked onto hers, that sent warmth curling through her chest. Olivia, seated across from Felicity, took the opportunity to lean in, her voice hushed. "So tell me again how you two met?" Felicity opened her mouth, but Elias answered before she could. "She was about to miss her sister's wedding. I made sure that didn't happen." Olivia studied him with careful curiosity. "That was very generous of you." Elias didn't look away from Felicity when he responded. "I don't believe in letting important things slip away." The words sent a shiver through her. She wasn't sure if he meant them in a broader sense, or if they held something deeper, something just for her. The next course arrived, a perfectly plated dish of herb-crusted lamb, but Felicity barely noticed. The air between her and Elias was charged, humming with something unspoken yet undeniable. At the head of the table, Meredith raised her glass, drawing the room's attention. "To Olivia and Daniel," she announced, lifting her champagne flute. "May their marriage be prosperous and filled with joy." The guests echoed the toast, glasses clinking together in a chorus of celebration. Felicity lifted hers as well, but when she glanced at Elias, she found him watching her again, as if she were the only person in the room. As the evening stretched on, she found herself drawn deeper into him. The way he listened when she spoke, how he caught her off guard with quiet remarks that made her laugh, the way his presence made every moment feel heightened, significant. When dinner came to an end, guests began drifting toward the ballroom, where soft music played beneath the glow of candlelight. Felicity had barely taken a step before Elias was beside her. "Come with me," he said, his voice low and certain. She hesitated, glancing around at the sea of people. "Where?" "You'll see." Without giving her time to second-guess, he reached for her hand, his fingers brushing against hers in a way that sent a thrill through her spine. He led her through the grand corridors of the estate, past gilded mirrors and towering windows that overlooked the vast, moonlit gardens. When they stepped outside, the cool night air wrapped around them, carrying the scent of blooming roses. Elias stopped beneath a sprawling oak tree, its branches adorned with twinkling lights from the wedding decorations. The soft glow illuminated his features, casting shadows over the sharp angles of his face. Felicity swallowed, suddenly hyper-aware of how close they were. "What are we doing out here?" He studied her for a long moment, as if gathering his thoughts. "I wanted a moment away from all of that." He nodded toward the house, where the sounds of laughter and music drifted through the open doors. "And I wanted it with you." Her heart pounded. "Elias, you have no idea how rare this is," he interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. "Meeting someone who isn't trying to impress me. Someone who sees me as more than just a name." She exhaled softly. "I didn't even know who you were when we met." "Exactly." He stepped closer, the space between them vanishing. "And yet you've been the only thing on my mind since I saw you standing at that gate, desperate to make it home." Her breath hitched. "Elias." He reached out, his fingers brushing along the curve of her jaw, sending a tremor through her. "Tell me you feel it too." Felicity's pulse thundered in her ears. She did feel it. She had felt it since the moment they boarded his plane, since the way he had looked at her across the dinner table, since the way he had effortlessly woven himself into her world as if he had always belonged there. Instead of answering, she let her fingers curl into the fabric of his suit, closing the last sliver of distance between them. Elias's breath ghosted over her lips, his touch featherlight as he tilted her chin upward. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty, just the undeniable gravity that had been pulling them together from the start. And when he finally kissed her, it was nothing short of breathtaking. The kiss was a spark in the night, a collision of two worlds that should have never intertwined. Felicity's pulse pounded as Elias's lips moved against hers, a mixture of warmth and certainty. His hand remained at her jawline, steady yet unyielding, as if anchoring her in place. The scent of his cologne, a mix of something rich and unfamiliar, wrapped around her, making the moment feel even more surreal. When they finally parted, the air between them was charged, heavy with something unspoken. Felicity's breath came uneven, her mind scrambling to process what had just happened. Elias's intense blue gaze remained locked onto hers, his expression unreadable yet impossibly sure. A moment passed, then another. Felicity took a step back, pressing her fingertips to her lips as if to confirm the kiss had been real. The cool night air did little to calm the heat rushing through her. Elias's voice, when he finally spoke, was softer than she had ever heard it. "I wasn't expecting that." Felicity let out a shaky breath, attempting to gather her thoughts. "Neither was I." The weight of what had just happened settled between them, and for the first time since meeting him, she felt completely, utterly vulnerable. This man, a stranger mere hours ago, had somehow managed to slip past every wall she had built. Elias didn't look away, didn't back down. If anything, he seemed to be considering something carefully, as if weighing a decision that had already been made in some part of his mind. Before she could speak again, movement from the house caught her attention. The soft glow of the ballroom lights spilled onto the terrace, and a few guests had wandered outside, laughter trailing behind them. Reality crashed back in. Felicity straightened, smoothing her hands over her dress. "We should go back inside." Elias studied her for a long moment before nodding. "If that's what you want." She wasn't sure what she wanted. But she knew that standing here, alone with him under the stars, was dangerous. They made their way back into the house, and as soon as they stepped through the doors, the atmosphere shifted. The music was livelier, the laughter louder. Olivia caught Felicity's eye from across the room, her expression laced with curiosity. But before she could approach, Meredith swept in. She was all smiles, her attention immediately locking onto Elias. "There you are. I was just telling Daniel's father about your latest acquisition. He'd love to hear more." Elias's expression remained polite, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, something Felicity recognized now. He didn't want to be here. Not in this conversation, not in this world of pleasantries and veiled expectations. But instead of making an excuse, he turned to Felicity. "Would you like to dance?" The question caught her off guard. Meredith blinked, clearly not expecting him to ignore her attempt at conversation. Felicity hesitated, glancing at the couples already moving across the floor. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, not in a room like this. But the way Elias was looking at her, waiting for her answer as if it was the only thing that mattered, made her decision for her. She placed her hand in his. Elias led her onto the dance floor with effortless confidence. The moment his hand settled at her waist, the rest of the room faded away. The music swelled, a slow, melodic rhythm that guided their movements. Felicity wasn't sure how she managed to keep up. She had never been taught to waltz or move with the kind of grace expected in a place like this, but Elias made it easy. He led with precision, his touch firm yet careful, as if he knew she needed reassurance. Their eyes met, and for a moment either of them spoke. Then, Elias's voice was a low murmur. "Are you always this unpredictable?" Felicity let out a quiet laugh, shaking her head. "I think you have that backward. You're the one who turned my entire day upside down." His lips curved slightly. "And would you change it?" She hesitated, searching his face. No, she admitted. Something shifted in his expression, something almost imperceptible yet undeniably significant. The dance continued, their movements synchronized in a way that made it feel as though they had done this 100 times before. But they hadn't. This was new, uncharted territory, and Felicity wasn't sure where it would lead. She only knew she didn't want to let go just yet. As the song drew to a close, Elias's grip lingered for a fraction longer than necessary before he finally released her. Felicity took a step back, her heart still racing. Before either of them could say anything, Olivia appeared at her side, her expression filled with barely contained curiosity. Felicity, can I borrow you for a second? Felicity glanced at Elias, who gave a small nod. I'll be here. With that, she allowed Olivia to pull her toward a quieter corner of the room. The moment they were alone, Olivia folded her arms. Okay. What exactly is going on between you two? Felicity exhaled, shaking her head. I don't know. Olivia raised an eyebrow. You don't know? Felicity ran a hand through her hair. It's complicated. Her sister studied her for a long moment before sighing. Look, I don't know much about him, but I do know that guys like Elias Montgomery don't just randomly fly strangers across the country, and then spend the entire night looking at them like they're the only person in the room. Felicity's stomach twisted. It's not like that. Olivia gave her a knowing look. Felicity sighed. Okay, maybe it is. But it doesn't matter. He lives in a completely different world. After tonight, he'll go back to it, and I'll go back to mine. Olivia tilted her head. Are you sure that's what he wants? Felicity hesitated. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure of anything at all. When she finally glanced back toward Elias, she found him still watching her, his expression unreadable yet undeniably focused. And in that moment, she realized something terrifying. This wasn't just an impulsive kiss. This wasn't just a fleeting moment. This was the beginning of something she might not be able to walk away from. Felicity steadied herself, inhaling deeply as she walked back toward Elias. She could still feel the weight of Olivia's words pressing against her chest. Was she misreading everything? Was she assuming he would walk away when he had given no sign of wanting to? As she neared him, Elias took a step forward as if he had been waiting for her to return. His gaze searched hers, his expression unreadable but intense. The energy between them had shifted since their dance, since the kiss beneath the stars. There was no denying it now. Whatever this was, it wasn't fleeting. Before she could say anything, Meredith reappeared, her voice laced with calculated charm. She had clearly been waiting for another chance to engage Elias, and now that Felicity had stepped away, she seized it. Elias barely acknowledged her, his attention still fixed on Felicity. Meredith, undeterred, pressed on, mentioning something about a business opportunity, an exclusive investment. Felicity watched as Elias's jaw tightened slightly, his patience thinning. Then, without looking away from Felicity, he spoke. His voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the finality in it. He had no interest in discussing business tonight. Meredith faltered, clearly taken aback by his disinterest, but before she could say more, Elias turned to Felicity and extended a hand. Walk with me. Her heart stuttered. There was no hesitation in him, no uncertainty. He was giving her a choice, and she already knew her answer. She placed her hand in his, and together they moved through the crowd, slipping out onto the terrace once more. The night air was cooler now, the distant hum of the party fading behind them. They walked in silence at first, the gravel crunching lightly beneath their feet as they moved farther from the house. The garden stretched out before them, bathed in moonlight, the scent of jasmine lingering in the air. When they reached a secluded spot near a marble fountain, Elias finally stopped. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable but intense. I don't do this, he said, his voice quieter now. I don't chase things that aren't certain. I don't step into someone's life without knowing exactly where it leads. Felicity's pulse quickened. And yet? He exhaled slowly, his gaze locked onto hers. And yet I can't seem to stop myself when it comes to you. Her throat tightened. He wasn't just saying this lightly. Elias Montgomery was a man who measured his words, who didn't waste them on empty sentiments. Felicity searched his face, her mind racing. This is insane, she whispered. We barely know each other. Then let me change that, he said simply. She swallowed hard, emotions swirling within her. You live in a different world, Elias. A world I don't belong in. His fingers brushed against hers, tentative but deliberate. I don't care about that. She shook her head. But I do. I don't want to be just another passing moment in your life, another distraction before you move on to something else. Elias's expression darkened slightly, his grip tightening ever so slightly. Is that what you think this is? I don't know what to think, she admitted, her voice raw. He was silent for a moment, then he let out a quiet breath, as if coming to a decision. Come to New York with me. Felicity's eyes widened. What? Not forever, he clarified. Just for a while. Let me prove to you that this isn't temporary, that I don't just walk away when things get complicated. Her heart pounded. And what happens if I say no? His jaw tightened. Then I'll respect that. Felicity inhaled sharply, her mind spinning. It was reckless. It was impulsive. But hadn't this entire night been? Hadn't her entire day been thrown off course the moment she met him? And hadn't she wanted it to be? She thought of her life before today. The routine, the predictability, the quiet certainty of knowing what each day would bring. And she thought of Elias, of the way he had looked at her, of the way he made her feel as if she were the only thing that mattered in a room full of people vying for his attention. Taking a deep breath, she met his gaze. Okay. A flicker of something passed through his eyes, relief, maybe. Or something deeper. He didn't say anything, didn't press further. Instead, he reached for her hand again, threading his fingers through hers. And for the first time that night, Felicity let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't stepping into an ending. She was stepping into a beginning. 6 months later, Felicity stood on the balcony of Elias's penthouse, the city skyline stretching endlessly before her. The air was crisp, the lights of New York shimmering like a sea of stars. She had done it. She had taken the leap, had stepped into his world without knowing where it would lead. And now, as she turned to find Elias watching her from the doorway, she knew she had made the right choice. He crossed the space between them, sliding his arms around her waist, pulling her against him. Penny for your thoughts? She smiled, leaning into him. Just thinking about how much can change in 6 months. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Regrets? Not a single one. Elias exhaled, something easing in his shoulders. Good. Felicity turned in his arms, looking up at him. You know, I thought I would always feel like I didn't belong in this world. His fingers traced slow circles against her back. And now? She smiled. Now I realize that it's not about the world I'm in. It's about who I'm with. Elias's expression softened, and without another word, he kissed her. It was slow, deliberate, the kind of kiss that spoke of certainty, of permanence. When they finally pulled apart, he brushed a strand of hair from her face. I love you, Felicity. Her heart swelled, warmth spreading through her chest. I love you too. And as she stood there, wrapped in his arms, with the city humming around them, she knew one thing for certain. She hadn't just found love. She had found home.